All right, this is a future review for the show Beef. The Netflix show Beef, which has run for one season now, I think. Sorry, I'm banging on my desk here. This show's apparently, when I finished watching this, first of all, I thought it was stunning, and maybe the best TV show. I'm trying to think of the best single season of TV that I've seen. I cannot remember a better season of television. And I don't even know how long. The only one that comes close, maybe Better Call Saul. I mean, but I think this was even topped it as just like a singular 10 episode arc. And I know this kind of gets thrown around when people are like, "Oh, it's because it's a show, it's a series," and just to kind of equate it to movies. But that's what we do here. This is a movie review show, and it did feel like it was a 5 hour movie because every episode's about a half an hour long, and even though they are contained and they have their own kind of very artsy fartsy titles, and man, this just touches on everything. I'll try to. I'll try. I'm just gonna. I have no notes or anything. I watched it all in about a week. Flew through it an episode or two a night. About a week and a half, I guess. I guess it's premiered on April 6th, and I'm recording this on April 19th. So, yeah, I mean, I'm willing to go out on a limb and put it at a 10 out of 10 because I would just watch this right away from scratch. Again, just I thought it was that good, and I cannot recommend it enough. So let me just say that, get that right out of the way. Maybe there may be a few criticisms, but even my criticisms, I'm just like I don't even I don't know if I hated that. I thought that was fine, and yeah, there's just so many different ways to talk about this. I'll try to just kind of piece it together. But basically, a little setup for you if you're not familiar with this. It's a Netflix show created by a Korean director named Lee Sung Jin, who I got to look up his. I didn't look up his stuff. I'll just do a quick IMDb dive here just to see if I'm missing anything on him because he doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I know The Nerve, right? The Nerve. Um, Lee Sung Jin. Da, 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 da. He's got very few credit. His only credit is Beef, but he was a writer and a producer on Dave as a Hulu show, Tuca and Birdie, Girl Boss. Oh my God, Silicon Valley, Two Broke Girls. It's Always Sunny on Philadelphia. Oh my God, he wrote 14 episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I guess, or was a staff writer on that show. Fascinating stuff. So he's mostly a writer before this, but then he Undone. What was Undone? Undone 2019. Oh, that was the he was a writer on Undone, which is that Bob Odenkirk animated rotoscope animation from. I watched the first episode of that, and I don't know why I stopped watching that show. On some Prime Video cartoon, a rotoscope cartoon. I liked it, but I didn't keep watching that. So I might want to go back to that at some point. He's a writer on that. Anyway, he doesn't have a long. This is his. He created the show, and he was the director of a few of the episodes. I think. Actually, no, just the season finale. He was the director of, and he was a co-writer on multiple episodes. But it was obviously a team effort here. Kakari and Jake Schreier were some of the other directors. I think the only other two directors of the 10 episode run. And this stars Stephen Yoon and Ali Wong. Ali Wong, she's a stand-up comedian, and she doesn't have a lot of she does some voice roles, and she's like popped in television performances. But I mean, as far as leading a something on this level, this is really kind of something stepping out of her. And this is another interesting thing because the casting of this was very much, I thought, excellent. I thought everyone was really well cast in this. And Stephen Yeun, who's been, obviously he's kind of he was nominated for an Oscar for Minari, which I still have not seen. Still got to watch that one. And I of course know him as a former Walking Dead head. Walking Dead head. He was on the first 5 seasons or 6 or so, or maybe more. I don't know. Of God knows that show kind of. And I kind of sort of think in my head, I stopped watching Walking Dead right around the time that his character got killed off. I probably stayed on for like another year or season or two. But yeah, that show was very frustrating to me. But I was a fan of that, and I did watch it was all those zombie shows. Is a small tangent here. They're fascinating to me up to a point because I'm always the most fascinating thing about the zombie shows to me is get to the origin of what's going on, and that show just stopped caring about that. In the first few seasons, they definitely that plays a major point. Part of the plot points are the characters trying to figure out why is this happening, and that to me is always very fascinating because otherwise it just becomes this post-apocalyptic world story, and that can be fun, but it's not as interesting to me as the zombie origins are always kind of a fun convention to play with. And there's my tangent on The Walking Dead, which I will never be revisiting. I bowed out with probably maybe halfway through that whole run or so. I don't know, maybe a little longer. Who knows? But anyway, Stephen Yeun, that's where I know him. But he's been in a lot of stuff. He was in what was that the one with the giant pig movie? He had a small role in that. He Okja. He was in Okja. He was in Sorry to Bother You. He was in, of course, Space Jam: A New Legacy. And he was great in Nope too. Also, that was the one I was thinking of, the Jordan Peele movie. Really good in that. So he's like, obviously and he's going to be in the new Bong Joon-ho movie coming out. Oh, that next year, 2024, Mickey 17. That one looks interesting to me. And he's a great actor. So is Ali Wong. This is like just a great cast, and these two in the leads, man. You can't get it. You can't get two better performances. These are two of my favorite performances ever. Really, they're just, these characters are so rich and fucked up. And yeah, does this get, if I had the misfortune of reading a blog post title about like how, oh my God, how beef earns its like insane, violent, endings. And I was like, man, just that headline alone is sort of a spoiler, because then I knew in the back of my head like this was going to some insane violent place, which I mean maybe you could think that it's going to, but you don't know. I mean, like I like going into something completely cold, and just having that base knowledge was a bit like upset. I wish I hadn't read that. I think it didn't impact my viewing really, but I remember going in and just like the whole time I was like, oh, I know this is gonna get fucking crazy, and it does. I guess I should have. But by the time this is coming out, you would have had a long chance to watch this if you were interested. So, spoilers. I'm not going to get into the plot necessarily, the details of what happens. I'll touch on a little bit. But then other actors in this are David Cho, and he of course is an actor. Is this his first role? I don't even know. Filmography. I'm looking at. He was obviously in like a lot of. He's done like those documentary series. He was on Anthony Bourdain's show. I remember he was on something with David Chang, I think it is. The other he's a cook. I think they're both Korean. They're both Korean from like California, I believe. Or there's some connection there. And I think he's been done a couple shows with that. I think it's with David Chang. He's collaborated with him, and he's got a bunch of controversies. Mostly really just the one, I guess. Apparently, he's got his controversy section on Wikipedia. There's one from the early 2000s. He was arrested in Japan. He fought a police officer. Okay, whatever. He spent 2 or 3 months in prison apparently. And then the main controversy that people always bring up is that he told a story on a podcast that he used to do back in 2014 where he admitted to committing rapey, quote unquote, his words, rapey behavior with a masseuse. And then he denied that any of it ever took place. That he said that the whole podcast itself was a work of fiction to explore these darker things. Which he's a weirdo artist, and I think at some point you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that's I don't mean to be like non-empathetic, but he, and this is resurfaced only because of his portrayal in this as the cousin to Stephen Yeun's character. And just throwing that out there, that is just like this is sort of like it's always going to follow him around. And at some point, like I do think if you take him at his word that none of this happened and there's been no like confirmations of it happening, then yeah, he told a fucked up story. But like he's a weird artist, and that's sort of where his whatever where he went that time. Like, I don't know. I don't mean to belittle it or whatever. Like I'm not trying to like make light of it at all. I just think at some point, why don't we just believe some people when they say that they said something was fiction, and it is. Like that seems fine to me. I don't know, even if it's a fucked up story. Like it just like there's a place for fucked up stories. I think I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to get into it too much more. But I thought he was good. You can tell he's a rough, kind of a raw actor, but it really kind of worked for this role. He does some stuff in this that you think it's over the top, but then you're sort of like, oh man, this is kind of effective. His character's over the top. So like his acting I thought was surprisingly good. And really worked in the role. And all the other performers, Maria Bello plays a very interesting character who's sort of at the head of this this company called Forsters, which is sort of like I guess it's sort of like supposed to be like a higher end. It's like a mix between like a Costco and a Lowe's or something like that, like a big box store. She's like the CEO of this company, and she and her spoilers here, her death scene is absolutely fantastic. Her body gets basically cut in half by her panic room door in her mansion closing in on her because she can't get in there in time, and she basically gets like sawed in half. It's like to have that character and what that character is really at the core of what the show is, because this show has like why the show is so good is not it's wildly entertaining, but it's also has a lot to say about American life and American culture, and her character being this sort of like avatar for the void of soulless capitalism to some extent is and having her just die by getting cut in half. Like she's never like egregiously evil in the show, but her aloofness in the show is like its own form of evil, and it kind of peppers a lot of stuff that happens. And the idea of like there's a recurring theme about like Stephen Yeun's character Danny, is always kind of commenting on like a white woman and how his little brother is kind of he gets catfished by someone by Ali Wong's character pretending to be a white woman. So there's like all this stuff about like the white, the show is funny because like obviously race is a central part of this and like the Asian experience in America, and I don't mean to shortchange that, but I also feel like it's less about that than you maybe would think. It's really more about kind of American life. I think you can make parallels to this being about American life in general, and that the kind of the cultural stuff, which again, not to shortchange that either, like that certainly plays a part in it, but it's nice to see characters who aren't just white characters play roles where it's not the show isn't explicitly about them being non-white. You know what I mean? It's just like they that's a part of it, but it's not like the whole thing. And I think the more important parts of this are about class, and that can be on that level that these characters could have been of any race. So I mean, when you get down to like the themes for me that hit home the most were more about capitalism and class and how it creates a kind of a culture of fear in a weird way. Like, and this is maybe I'm kind of going too far out on a limb here, but I felt like that this idea of anger and being scared of someone else, and even in this case, two people who look like they're both obviously they're not Ali Wong's I think they say she's Chinese Vietnamese in the show, and I'm not. I think she's in real life she's Vietnamese, and obviously Steven Yeun's Korean. He's Korean in the show, so like they're not. They're both these Asian people, but they're this fear of someone else that's different from you, and even though it's just like they end up having a lot in common, as you find out just from like their what's kind of their life experiences are like fairly similar in a lot of ways. And the stunning final episode, which is essentially just one long conversation between the two of them as they're like lost in the desert outside of Los Angeles, basically on the verge of death, trying to survive after they both kind of they've run off the road and their cars have crashed. Like it's a wild final two episodes. But the penultimate episode is the action-packed one, and then sort of the resolution of the kind of, it's almost like the denouement, the extended denouement, if I can throw that word out there. I'm never pronouncing that exactly right, but that kind of is what the final 10th episode is just this like this they've come to this understanding, and then it's a weirdly sweet ending after the hell that we've been subjected to, and just the biting your nails, like, oh my god, could this get any more out of control? Could this get any more wild and weird, and just like difficult to watch, and difficult to watch in a way that is you're drawn to it, just like in the best possible way. This one is like just feels so hard to watch. You just can't. You just have to get back into it. And, we like my wife and I finished watching this last night. And it was like we weren't gonna, but we were like both like, yeah, we have to watch this last episode. And I thought it was such a brilliant last episode, and so well acted. And they get sick eating berries, and it's like, and this idea of like being like who we never know who we truly are, even to the very end. They kept that was the theme that I just loved. That the Ali Wong's character, who like she's like kind of a fake botanist, because she started this plant company that gets bought by the Foster's company, and she makes a ton of money. She like her boutique brand of like house plants, and she turns out she tells him she's like, go find elderberries for us to eat, and they end up eating these poison berries instead. And he's like, I thought you were a plant expert. She's like, I don't fucking know. She's just like, we're all lying to get to where we need to, or we think we need to be in life to some degree all the time. And that idea is just like it's so good and hits home so well. And they just did little things constantly, little motifs and threads were always popping up in this, and just the details were amazing, and I loved it. I could go on and on about the show, and I am wary of them continuing this, because it did feel like such a nice ending and an arc that where do you start this up again? Like, what does Beef season 2 even look like? I can't imagine what the fuck that looks like. I cannot. I almost I hope. I want to see more from these actors and these filmmakers, these creators, but I also just fear the disappointment that it's the highs and the kind of the near perfection that they've achieved here with this show is going to be very difficult to recreate. And I'll be I'll watch it obviously, but I feel like so much. I mean, just where do you go? I guess I read a note about how the creator said he does have a 3-season arc in mind. So I mean, apparently maybe he saw into the future where this story can continue in a way that makes sense. I just don't know how. There's so much big stuff happened in this. I don't know where. At some point, it becomes unbelievable. Like, I think you can get away with it in a singular 10-episode thing that's just standalone as it is. But maybe it's like an anthology. I don't know. I have no idea what the plan would be to continue this. Maybe they play different characters. I don't know. I just something. But I am nervous or something like that. Again, I could talk about this forever and ever. I think I didn't even touch on like half the things I maybe in my head last night wanted to talk about. But hopefully I praised it enough, because I like 10 out of 10. What else can you want for something like this? Is just pure, beautiful entertainment that is meaningful and has so much to say and just was so well executed on every level by everyone involved.